Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, I'd like to thank you all for being here and supporting us. Before I move on to the next segment, I would like to share with you all a poem that I had written a little while ago when I just found out that tensions between India and Pakistan had recently erupted again. And it was written on a very personal level, but I feel that the occasion is fit and the timing is apt. It's in Hindi and Urdu, debatably so in both languages. We're not getting into that. And it's called Ab to aage badhne do hame. हिंसा के मैले कपड़े को हिंसा से ना धो पाए तो अमन से क्यों नहीं, अब तो आगे बढ़ने दो हमें। दिल को पत्थर बनाकर सीने पे लोहा तान कर अपने ईमान को चुप बैठाकर हम तरक्की ना ला पाए तो अमन से क्यों नहीं, अब तो आगे बढ़ने दो हमें। दूर बैठे हमारी आंखें नम हैं, हिंदुस्तान के लिए नहीं, पाकिस्तान के लिए नहीं, कश्मीर के लिए नहीं, बल्कि इंसानियत के लिए, उन सिपाहियों के लिए जो अपनी आखिरी दिवाली और ईद मनाते चले गए, जिनकी रग रग में मजहब या जात नहीं, हिफाजत की मंजिल रहती है, जिनका डर बंदूक की गोली में नहीं, अपनी माँ के आंसुओं में बसता है, जिनकी शहीदी हमें रातों की नींद नहीं, सवेरे का दुख दे जाती है। हिंसा से हम इस दुख को ना मिटा पाए, इन आंसुओं को ना पहुँच पाए तो अमन से क्यों नहीं, अब तो आगे बढ़ने दो हमें। हमारी दुआएं जीत या हार में नहीं, अमन के सुनहरे पन में है, दोनों देशों की समृद्धि में है। जो आसमान पूरे जहान को ओढ़ता है, उसे और बुलंद बनाने में है। ज़मीन की मिट्टी को खोद कर कब्र नहीं, दोस्ती की जड़ों को उगाने में है। ये ख्वाब बुना है अभी, थोड़ी सी रात है बाकी, थोड़ी सी तन्हाई और थोड़ी सी उदासी, मगर सुबह तो होने दो, सूरज को चढ़ने दो, इस सन्नाटे को बोलने दो, मेरी रूह को जागने दो, इस ख्वाब को पूरा तो होने दो, अब तो आगे बढ़ने दो हमें, अब तो आगे बढ़ने दो हमें। शुक्रिया। Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to move on to the final segment of our conference tonight and invite upon stage our last speaker, a very special and awaited guest who we're all very excited to hear speak and meet, Dr. Subramanian Swamy. Dr. Swamy currently serves as a member of parliament in the Rajya Sabha, the upper house of parliament, and served as a member of the Planning Commission of India and was a cabinet minister under the Chandrasekhar government. Dr. Swamy was appointed as chairman of the Commission on Labour Standards and International Trade by former Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao. In the past, Dr. Swamy has earned a PhD in economics from Harvard University and has written a plethora of books, such as Hindus Under Siege and Building a New India. Not that I needed this introduction, but it is my absolute honor to welcome on stage tonight Dr. Subramanian Swamy. Ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, and congratulations to all the young students of NYU for organizing this seminar. I am first going to speak to you about the nature of the relationship between India and Pakistan, and then speak finally about the prospects of the future relations. In 1947, the British adopted a bill called Indian Independence Act of 1947, which surprisingly, in its objects and reasons stated for the bill, said that the object was to create a Muslim-governed Pakistan and a Hindu-governed India. They also they removed their paramountcy on the 600 kingdoms of the Indians, the undivided India, and made them all independent countries and gave them an opportunity to decide whether they wanted to be independent or become a part of Pakistan or India by signing the Instrument of Accession, which is a legal document based on the 1935 Constitution of Undivided India. Now, out of 600 kingdoms, about 500 signed to merge with India, and about 100 merged with Pakistan. The legality of that document was clearly stated that once the king decides to sign the instrument of accession, it is final and irrevocable. And two, he need not consult the wishes of the people of his kingdom. The issue of Kashmir arose because Jawaharlal Nehru decided to take it to the United Nations. And in the United Nations, under Article 6 of the Charter, the United Nations Security Council adopted a resolution which is not mandatory. If it was in Article 7 of the Charter of the United Nations, it would have been mandatory. But Article 6 only makes it recommendatory. And as Umar Abdullah explained very clearly, the requirement was that as a precondition, Pakistan would withdraw all its troops and irregulars, which had forcibly entered the kingdom after 15th August 1947 and tried to take over the state forcibly. While the king had at that stage taken the stand that he has not made up his mind whether he wants to be part of Pakistan or part of India, and therefore he entered into a standstill agreement with both countries. Now, subsequent to that, the second clause of that recommendatory resolution was that India would withdraw bulk of its troops and keep that which is necessary for law and order and for conducting an election plebiscite. So the plebiscite was the third part. And throughout the last 70 years, Pakistan has declined to withdraw its troops, much less the irregulars, from any part of Kashmir. And by international law, such a resolution which is recommendatory and lasted for so many years without implementation becomes lapses. It becomes deceased, so to speak. So to quote the UN resolution over and over again is meaningless. And furthermore, from the Indian point of view, we found, at least I found when I was the minister, that Jawaharlal Nehru had not brought it before the cabinet because he was quite confident that the cabinet would not approve. And certainly Sardar Patel was deputy prime minister, had made it public that he will oppose it. And so he went on his own and filed it. The nation didn't disown Jawaharlal Nehru, but that doesn't mean that a future government has to be bound by what Jawaharlal Nehru did, which was illegal. That is, he did not take cabinet approval. Under the Indian Constitution, there's an article called 253, which says that unless an international agreement or treaty is ratified by Parliament, it can be abrogated anytime. So therefore, since this was not only not subject to cabinet approval, it was also not, according to the constitutional principle, ratified by Parliament. So as far as most Indians think, and I certainly think myself, I can't say what the government of India is thinking, but I do know sometimes what I think today, the government of India thinks tomorrow. So therefore, I'm saying that this resolution has no legality. In fact, I'm urging my government to write to the UN to say that this may be treated as null and void. So the issue of Kashmir arises from the fact that the instrument of accession, which was signed on 26th October 1947 by the Maharaja, that he is acceding to India, that is final. And therefore, whatever is in possession of Pakistan, of Kashmir, is illegally held by Pakistan and it properly belongs to India. In 1994, the Parliament of India passed a resolution saying that the Parliament resolves unanimously. It was a Congress government, not a BJP government, in 1994, Narasimha Rao's government. The Congress resolves, the Parliament resolves that it regards Kashmir, the entire Kashmir, the whole of Kashmir, as an integral part of India, and that steps will be taken to recover what is presently held in illegal occupation by Pakistan. So the Indian position is very, very clear, but it makes it difficult to hold a dialogue on the future status of Kashmir. So to that extent, I have a disagreement with Omar Abdullah when he says that he thinks that this is a practical solution to regard the LOC as a frontier and settle on that basis. I don't think that any government of India will be able to settle it on anything less than what the 1994 Parliament resolution had laid down. And I think the mood of the country that I see over the years is only getting hardened. And it reflects itself in places where many people would think that we shouldn't be really stepping in. For example, on artists not coming, etc. But that's the mood in the country, that they don't want any of this. They don't want any dilution of our attitude to Pakistan at this present moment. Now, in view of this, what is the scope of our relations with Pakistan? That is the real question. Now, Pakistan has to define its identity. There was no Pakistan before 47. There was no even concept of a Muslim state before 1947. India, of course, is an ancient country, and we have an identity based on our ancient culture and unbroken civilization, and in which many communities have participated, and they've lived and prospered. For example, the Zoroastrians who fled Islamic conquest of Iran, they were welcomed in our country, they were looked after, and when the British left, they tried to seduce them to say, we will give you special reservations in view of the fact that you're a small community. But they said that the Hindus have looked after us for 1,000 years. We don't need you, so please go, and the Hindus will look after us. This is what the Parsis had said. Similarly, the Jews, persecuted everywhere in the world. When they came to India, we gave them a place to stay in. India gave them a place to stay in Cochin and Bombay, built synagogues for them. And when Israel was formed, one of the earliest resolutions they passed was a thank you to India, saying, thank you, India, you are the only nation in the world which didn't persecute the Jews. And we had with Syrian Christians also. When the Arabs came to Kerala as a trader, we in fact formally designated them as our son-in-law. They married and settled down. And they were called by the British as Mopala. But the Kerala, the word in Malayalam is Mapillai, which means son-in-law. So there is that history there. But Islam came to India by violence. And this is one of the factors which dominates our thinking when we deal with a country like Pakistan. Because if you go by DNA studies, including the one recently published by the University of Cambridge on the theory of genetics, the DNA of all Indians and Pakistanis is the same. So you couldn't have come from somewhere else if your DNA is the same as ours. So Muslims in India are also whose ancestors were Hindus. And Pakistan is also the same. I'm not talking of here and there people coming and like the Parsis came to India, some of them intermarried. We are not talking about this microscopic minority. But by and large, Indian subcontinent is of the same DNA. And therefore, we would like to make Pakistan agree to defining its identity with the subcontinent and not with West Asia. And in my opinion, that is where part of the difficulty arises. This is probably the reason why in one of the wars imposed on India by Pakistan, Pakistan lost 62% of its population, which is now known as Bangladesh. So therefore, I would say that Pakistan's main issue is how to regard India as a country with which we were one together, or as a country which was part of a conquering violent army of the past. And that has to be resolved before we can proceed further. Now, there are organizations which say that India is an unfinished chapter of Islamic history. For instance, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Taliban, their literature clearly defines India as an unfinished chapter of Islam. That's because in countries like Iran, Mesopotamia, Babylon, which is now known as Iraq, Egypt, Islamic conquest led to 100% of the population being converted to Islam. But India had 800 years of Islam, and only 20% of the population got converted. So therefore, they call it as an unfinished chapter. Second factor is that all the terrorists that come, I mean, we have minor terrorists here and there, and they have been taken care of. But the major terrorist force that we face is from across the border. And as Umar Abdullah told us, there are all kinds of nationalities. And the only thing common with them is Islam. And their appeal to our people, local people whom they want to recruit, is also on the basis of Islam. It's not a secular movement by any chance. So in a sense, what is being done is that this whole thing is being converted without it being stated as a Hindu-Muslim question. And that poses problem for us because we have got about 150 plus million Muslims in our country. And of course, many of them are in government, some of them are MLAs, ministers, all that. And you saw Umar Abdullah himself was very categorical that he regards himself as an Indian. We have a problem with them. We have discussions. Right now in the Uniform Civil Code, there is a discussion going on. The Muslim clerics are very upset. But the Uniform Civil Code is in our Constitution. And it's Article 44. And it is an obligation of the government to implement it. And so, therefore, the government of India is seeking an opinion from the Law Commission as to how it can be implemented. In the meantime, try and hold discussions. It's a question of equality of law or equality before law. Article 14 of the Indian Constitution requires any practice whatsoever has to be based on the principle of equality before the law. Even our freedom of worship or freedom of practicing religion, which is in Article 25 of the Constitution, clearly says that, yes, practicing religion is a fundamental right of the individual, but it is subject to reasonable restrictions. And 3 reasonable restrictions, categories of reasonable restrictions have been placed in the Constitution, that every religious belief and practice can be restricted or modified by the state on the grounds of morality, on the grounds of health, and on the grounds of public order. So it's wrong to say that any religious practice, we should not interfere. And furthermore, in our country, in India, we have uniform criminal code. That is, the criminal procedures are uniform for Hindus and Muslims. There is no Sharia law for criminal acts. And so if the Muslim community has accepted uniform criminal code, why should not the Muslim community also accept uniform civil code? This is the issue. And moreover, in a country like Australia or United States, the Muslim community has accepted uniform civil code. So I think some of these things which are being deliberately raised is to create this division. And we think that there's no division because we regard Muslims also as a part of our ancestral family, that they are also from this country, and they are also a part of us, and we treat them as family. So this is where Pakistan is constantly interfering. Now, we have come to two further conclusions. With that, I'll conclude and take questions. One is the issue of dialogue with Pakistan raises the question with whom? We can't have any dialogue with Nawaz Sharif because we consider him a dummy prime minister who cannot implement anything. We have tried that for 2.5 years. The prime minister has gone out of his way, subject to criticisms in his own country. He has suddenly dropped in on his way from Afghanistan to India to attend a marriage ceremony of Nawaz Sharif. None of these gestures has had any effect. And terrorism has continued across the border all through. So finally, when these 18 soldiers were killed while they were asleep in their camp in Uri, the government decided to take a retaliatory action. I agree that we have phrased it in such a way that Pakistan doesn't feel compelled to react to save its prestige or something. We have made it as a local, across-the-border operation. But there is a fundamental decision, I think. This is my understanding. I am a member also of the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Defense and the Parliament's Consultative Committee on External Affairs, and we have been briefed thoroughly on this. I'm convinced now that our government will give proactive responses to any cross-border attack on us, which is of terrorists. So therefore, unless the political authority begins to assert itself in Pakistan, to discipline its army, to discipline its ISI, and put an end to all these terrorists who are living freely in Pakistan, I think it will be impossible for any government of India to have a dialogue on wide-ranging items. If they want to talk about which terrorists they should hand over to us and why, those discussions can take place at the national security level and the Director General of Military Operations. But political normalcy between India and Pakistan is something which we in India think that is fruitless and therefore should not be engaged in. I am not a person who is a hardliner as media portrays me. Because when the Soviets arrived in Afghanistan, I got an urgent message from the then military ruler of Pakistan, Ziaul Haq, because I was condemning the Soviet attack on Pakistan, on Afghanistan, and saying it poses as a danger to Pakistan and thereafter a danger to India. So he invited me to come and visit the frontier areas where the Afghan refugees had come. And I had been to Pakistan twice, that's right, defending Pakistan's right to acquire arms to defend itself against a possible Soviet incursion into Pakistan. The same thing when Musharraf became the president. India did not recognize him. And he remembered me perhaps because I had addressed the Defense College, National Defense College of Pakistan, and he was the commandant, I think, at that time. So he sent me a message, and I went to Pakistan I met twice or thrice, and as Umar Abdullah correctly says, when he was president, there was an attempt to curb the terrorism. I don't know what has happened to him recently. Maybe the shock of being removed from office has put him out of balance. And he's saying things which I would have never expected him. But I think, I would like to say very clearly that none of us think in terms of hate towards Pakistan. We regard them, as the music is, for example, journalists, your food, all kinds of, even your jokes, they have free circulation in India. And we consider ourselves as one people. But the fact of the matter is that there are two issues which have to be resolved. One is the political authority must start asserting itself. And two, this Islam appeal to India must stop, which means that terrorists have to be brought to book. And the international opinion is also in favor of it. All countries of the world are ready to assist in this particular aspect. Even the Chinese, with whom I have had long interactions, right from the time of Morarji Desai, I've been to China so many times. The Chinese, at my request, even opened the gates of Kailash and Mansarovar, the holy site of Lord Shiva's abode, for pilgrims to come there. Even the Chinese, although they are supportive, they are standing by their good friend, but they privately tell me, and they have, in fact, your Dawn newspaper has also produced a document for which one of the Dawn's correspondent has gone into trouble, where it says that the Chinese have said, we'll support you, but you've got to end this problem. So there is an international consensus. So if Pakistan asserts its political authority, and your people, Pakistani people, can do it, the lawyers' agitation brought down Musharraf. Same thing, the public agitation in 1977 brought down Zulfikar Ali Bhutto for rigging the election. There is scope for public assertion in Pakistan, but the political authority must assist the public and be friendly to the public to encourage them to think in terms of democratic protests. So without these two aspects, the civilian authority and this Islamization of its terrorist attacks on India, which has a negative effect within India. Wherever Muslims are in majority in India, the Hindus are having problems. Kashmiri Pandits were driven out of the valley. Similarly, Kerala, Malappuram, the situation of the Hindus is in a horrible state. In fact, there is no police which is allowed to go in there. The Sharia seems to operate there. Hindus cannot sell their houses to anyone but a Muslim. This is the kind of situation wherever they are in majority. It may be because they think that where they are in majority, the clerics say this is Darul Islam, so there's no room for minorities. In Saudi Arabia, there are 2 million Hindus who are workers in Saudi Arabia. They are not allowed to build temples. They are not allowed to celebrate Diwali. They are not allowed to even hold pujas inside their house or even carry a picture of Ramchandraji in their pocket. Now, that is their country, Saudi Arabia. I'm not, fundamentally objecting to it. But this Islamization thing is forcing our people to become hostile within the country. And therefore, it will create a problem for us. And if Pakistan is the source and is not willing to become more democratic, it is not, the civilian authorities is not willing to take charge and keep the army under check and assist India in controlling the flow of terrorists, then India is prepared for the consequences. And that is what the surgical operation signaled. And I hope changes will come. So in short, I will say the way the whole creation of India and Pakistan and subsequent developments, and now it has got entangled into the fact that we have no channel by which we can have a dialogue solution. And two, we cannot, under any circumstance, I am not one of those people who is going to leave anybody in any doubt, there is no question of yielding even 1 inch of Kashmir on any grounds, because it is, according to the constitutional principle, a part of India. And whatever assurances Jawaharlal Nehru gave you, you may go and consult him wherever he is and ask him. We are not bound by it. But we are fundamentally in favor of the whole South Asian nations, the SAARC in particular, to be a forum of peace and to work in dialogue with the Pakistanis. Pakistanis have to recognize that India's strength has grown, Pakistan has become smaller, and there are movements within Pakistan which are now getting international. There are Baluchis in New York, there are Baluchis wanting citizenship in India or want refugee status in India. Human rights is a universal thing. Somebody, the earlier moderator was mentioning about Sri Lanka's example. Sri Lanka's, the Tamils were all over the world, and they were, invited by governments for discussion. So if you don't control this, and if you continue to be hostile to India, I think the other regions of Pakistan might start also asserting itself like the way Bangladesh asserted. We are of the view that Pakistan should remain one because it's in our interest. But if Pakistan is not taking necessary steps, then there's little that we can do. Like we had little we could do in Bangladesh till 10 million refugees came across to India. And then Pakistan on 3rd of December 1971 bombed 8-9 cities of India, and that led to a war. So war is no solution, but this time India is now as a new government. We are not the namby-pamby government of the past of Congress. We are a government which is not a single person government or a pyramidical structured government. It's a government with lots of countervailing forces, and all these opinions have taken account. But the fundamental decision is that we will not tolerate terrorism, and if it comes, we will retaliate by means that are available to us. This in broad is what I say. It is a gloomy picture for negotiated settlement and dialogue, and therefore, if once we come to that conclusion, we will not allow dilution of this consciousness, because if you have to prepare for something, then you can't allow dilution of consciousness. So all this Nach Gana business and all that will go by as a consequence of that. Not that one should normally object to culture and arts in a political warfare, but in this particular case, we are in a situation, not in a war-like situation, but a possibility of war by miscalculation, and therefore we have to be prepared. Thank you very much.
A very eloquent speaker, and I really enjoyed that speech. And I'm a Pakistani student at NYU. So, first of all, I want to know if you understand that when you say Pakistan is just an offshoot of India having trouble determining its national identity, that same definition applies to Bangladesh and a list of countries in Central Asia that were part of the USSR and then formed their own national. Sure, Pakistan may have a younger history than India, but when you have statements like that, they only come across as arrogant, and it feels like you're just dictating your terms, which is never a positive stance for negotiation. Second of all, the real question basically, you said that fundamental Islam is a problem in terms of peaceful negotiations, but I will just remind you that fundamental doctrines of all nature tend to be violent, and they tend to repress the voice of minorities, including the famous philosopher and political scientist Kautilya, who said that political decisions should only be determined by calculations of self-interest, rational self-interest, not concerns for humanity. And
that part is your addition.
Well, sir, that is okay. That is a matter of opinion. But he emphasized the rational calculations over short-term concerns.
National interest, yes.
Leading to the final part of my question, which I wanted to ask Umar Abdullah as well.
One question at a time.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry, sir. Just one question in the end that you should really focus on. Anyways, you've said that the Pakistani government sponsors terrorists, and a lot of you have been conveniently avoiding the word terrorist and jumping between terrorist and militant. But what the Indian government does with the pellet guns and killing people, isn't it the exact same thing? And unless we acknowledge the problems on both sides, we're never going to get anywhere. And I don't think that it's just that you don't understand the difference between terrorists and militants. You're just conveniently trying not to use that.
Well,
Thank
what
you.
the Indian government, I'll come with your last question, the Indian government is doing in Kashmir is what it's required to do under the constitution to maintain public order. We think all these demonstrators are instigated by Pakistan. Many of them are paid by Pakistan. And they have even got a list, a rate list. If you throw a stone on the military truck, you'll get 5,000 rupees. If you throw it at a Kashmiri police truck, you'll get 2,000 rupees. This kind of encouragement is being given. Many of them we have found them to be drugged by narcotics. And therefore, I think, let me say very clearly that human rights is valid question only up to the point where we have to maintain public order. We are a legitimate country, and we have been recognized recognized as a country which is legitimate, and Kashmir is legitimately part of India under the law. And anyone who tries to separate it, we will use any amount of force necessary to see that that fails.
The individual in the back.
Doctor-
I'm sorry. The individual in the back.
I'm in the back.
Sir, in the time that you're going to wait for the Pakistani government to be one that you can accept to have dialogue with, what do you think is a short-term and in the long run a solution? Because you aren't willing to accept the line of control, you're not willing to accept the United Nations conditions for a referendum, and all you want is the entire Kashmir to be a part of India.
Yeah.
What do you think is a solution if you're not willing to work with anyone?
The solution is to wait. The Chinese are waiting for Taiwan for a suitable atmosphere. And we will wait for a suitable opportunity.
But sir, in waiting, are you not going to be creating so much unhappiness and a lot of
Whose
trouble to the
unhappiness?
people of Kashmir who are living in a state where for 100 days they can't send their kids to school or go to
Yeah,
work?
that's pretty bad. It's that they can't send their children to school. Most people in Kashmir want a normal, peaceful life. And these agitators are instigated by Pakistan. We are convinced of it. I am convinced of it on what has been presented to our committee. And I will tell you that we have not used all the force that we could. We have used the minimum force. But when you are attacked, when the police is attacked, you can't tell them that just turn the other cheek. If they have to do something, earlier on they were using bullets, now they're using pellets. So therefore, at some stage, those who are instigating these children to come out on the streets, they have to be identified by the society and handed over to us. We are also catching many of them. And I'm sure that whoever is elected in Kashmir has not expressed any sympathy for this. You saw Umar Abdullah here itself. He did not defend them. In fact, he didn't even criticize the killing of that Barhani. He only said that the mismanagement of the situation after. That was it. And he is not a member of our coalition. It's Mufti Said's daughter, who is Mehbooba, who's the chief minister, who's in alliance with us. And I think the world is being given a false impression that there is an uprising in Kashmir. Of course, it's a fact that people are coming on the streets, but I know from an Indian experience that coming out on the streets and burning buses and throwing stones at the police has happened many times, and then it fizzles out. There was a Dravidian movement in Tamil Nadu. It has fizzled out. Now they have become part of our society. They contest elections and they become chief ministers and make money like everybody else.
No, right here.
Sir, India doesn't want to take any mediation with regard to Kashmir. India also doesn't want to implement UN resolutions.
Yes.
So, India wants to speak to Pakistan. Who is there in Pakistan to speak? And what exactly India wants to speak? when it says
I don't
very
want to see.
clearly that the entire Kashmir region is part of itself.
No, I have not said anywhere that India wants to speak to Pakistan. I said we don't know who to speak to Pakistan in Pakistan. Until that is resolved, then the question of speaking to Pakistan doesn't arise. It's no point in speaking to the elected government in Pakistan because they don't carry any weight. They are not able to implement any decision. They've told us so many things in private. None of it has been even remotely implemented. So therefore, we can go on for years and years without talking to Pakistan. It's not a difficult proposition. If Pakistan feels, then it has to meet those certain minimum conditions for a political dialogue, which means that the government should be in a position to deliver what it promises.
Right there.
Hi, sir. I am speaking to you today. I respect you, sir. You're my elder. And I'm a proud Indian, I want to say. And I'm speaking to you as a concerned Indian today because some of the rhetoric that has been flying in this room is rather disturbing to me as a Sikh and as an Indian. Because this whole idea of Islamicization of things, I mean, like my friend said, there are fundamentals in every society. There were Sikh fundamentals in 1984. There have been Hindu fundamentals in India as well. So I do not understand how you can sort of, I mean, if the fundamentals are sort of, Islamicizing this issue, is the right response to sort of claim that everybody had a Hindu DNA or an ancient culture that everybody belonged to? Doesn't that polarize societies instead of joining them together?
Well,
that means that a Sikh as well has a Hindu DNA. I have a human DNA, and I have a South Asian DNA, sir, and I'm proud of that.
well, you can be proud of what you want to be. I'm not putting any ban on that. I'm only saying that please don't compare the militancy or the terrorism, whatever you want to call it, of the Sikhs between 1983 and 1981 and 84. I was one of those people who had almost single-handedly, because there was hardly any other Hindu who took the stand. I think Chandrasekhar also took the stand, that Operation Blue Star was to be condemned. And we condemned it, and we said this was a move by Mrs. Gandhi to try and garner a fundamentalist vote among the Hindu population. Since then, the Sikh community has always regarded people like me and Mr. Chandrasekhar was no more as very, very friendly, and they meet me wherever I go, where they have gurdwaras, whether it's in New York or whether it's in London. And I have no difficulty, and now there is no such thing as Sikh fundamentalism. So don't say that. Maybe you have some people in Pakistan who have been paid for and they are there, but otherwise there is no Sikh fundamentalism movement in India. Sikhs are ones who fought for the Hindus, and the Hindus will never forget it, the sacrifices of Guru Tegh Bahadur and Guru Gobind Singh. So wait a minute. So first of all, there is no other fundamentalism in India that has any violent ability to create that kind of disorder and the kind of explosions and the kind of misery that the Islamic terrorists are able to do. That is why I've singled them out. And they are coming from Pakistan, and they are inspired by Islam. Many responsible Muslims say they are not the real Islam. Well, there is a school of Islam, if they are not. Either the clerics disown them and say that they are all kafirs, which nobody is doing, or you say that it's a school of Islam. But the school of Islam seems to be gaining ground. And I want to make sure that it doesn't infect the vast population of Muslims in our country. And that's why I mentioned, I am not talking about Islamization in a general extent. I must tell you, I have no personal animosity. One of my son-in-laws is a Muslim, I must tell you. My wife is a Parsi. I have Jews and Christians also in my family, and none of them seem to think that I am an Islamic phobic person at all. That's not the issue. The issue is what is affecting our society. Our society is being daily, by the use of money power and the internet, the Muslim youth are being targeted that they must fight, they must die for creating a caliphate in Kashmir, this is the kind of propaganda that is going on, and then we have to meet that.
I promise I'll get to everyone. V-neck gray.
Sir, I just had a question. Speech, I really appreciate the insight. So, based on the Independence Act of 1947, Balochistan was not supposed to be part of Pakistan.
That's right.
One out of 4 or 5 areas of Balochistan was supposed to be part of Pakistan. Pakistan forcibly entered Balochistan just like they entered Kashmir. So now, they've been murdering Balochis and throwing them out of airplanes for how many years? So I ask you the question: what do you think the role is that India should play in helping Balochistan gain its independence? Yeah.
Well, we have reached that stage, yes. I think, first of all, those who are Baluchis and living in New York, you should set up a human rights center, produce sufficient literature, and then go to the UN and try to get people to get concerned, and perhaps at the UN in Geneva to set up a commission on these violent things. I know that tremendous violence is a thing, but it's all anecdotal. I would like this to be documented, and then after you do it, then by then maybe circumstances changes when India could do something.
Do you think they should give asylum to Balochis?
I think that's on process, so I'd rather not comment on it just now, but I think it appears to me something that will happen.
Again, please wait for the mic to speak. The individual in the back, the blue shirt.
Dr. Swamy, thank you so much for coming tonight. You look very dashing. You mentioned a lot of great resolutions and laws in your speech, but I think one important one that was missed was ASPA. This is the Armed Forces Special Provisions Act, which allows forces to go in and act with impunity. And it's very evident that in Kashmir it's being used very widely. The forces there use pellet guns, and I don't think they use them all the time on individuals who have been paid by Pakistan. There's a very clear example of a young girl, 11 years old. Her name is Insha. She was standing by her window and she was shot by a pellet gun. And she went to India for surgery. She went to a Delhi hospital. She's blinded. I don't think she was paid to look out of her window at the forces. So the question is, do you think your government protects human rights in Kashmir? And why are Kashmiris the only group of people who are impacted by the pellet gun? Nowhere else is it used in the entire country of India. And do you really think the pellet gun is considered minimal force when you have a projectile traveling at 100 miles per hour, more than 100 pellets that get dispersed? Do you really think that is equal force to a stone thrown by a protester?
The issue is, first of all, what should be done at the ground level is a decision that is taken by the government in consultation with the state governments. In this particular case, except for a little noise here or there, the government of Kashmir, of which, of course, the BJP is part of, has not raised any demand that this should be stopped. Although the Home Minister, the Union Home Minister on his visit said that we will reduce the occasions in which this can be used. Now, demonstrations which are violent against the armed forces, what is an appropriate force can always be challenged in the Supreme Court. And it has been challenged once, and the Supreme Court did not agree to put a restriction. Kashmir, in the AFSA part, again, the Manipur, the Supreme Court directed that it's gone on too long and it should be lifted, and we have lifted it. Now, same thing, no other part of India this is happening. Of course, there's no other part of India where this kind of agitation is taking place, where people are assembling and throwing stones at the law and order forces. It happens to be that only in Kashmir, and Kashmir because Pakistan is instigating it, and we are basing it on the solid information that we have, and therefore it has to be put down. We can't demoralize our police saying that you turn the other cheek when they throw a stone at you. They have to be told that you can use force, including firing pellets, if you feel that's the only way to protect things. The local commanders are given that freedom. And I don't think all this appeal to human rights and so on, nobody has to give us lectures. I have fought for human rights when Mrs. Gandhi declared a state of emergency in India. And I had been recognized as the man who made the difference for Mrs. Gandhi to ultimately go and declare elections, which she lost, of course. So the issue is of human rights, we are all committed. The Indian Constitution has enough provisions for it. And I don't think we have to be given lectures on human rights. If that was so, then I would like to say that there is no other country which can match us. Do you think the United States can match us in superior human rights? Obviously not. I can give you 1,000 examples where the human rights have not been, by the standards of the liberals, it has not been adhered to in the United States. So we have to decide. We will not allow Kashmir to go into lawlessness, and the necessary force to control it we will use. And we are not going to listen to anybody's lectures on human rights.
The individual in the black. Speak up into the mic.
Okay. According to you, there's no fundamentalists in India. You were thanked by Jews because you saved them when they were killed. So it means India is a heaven on earth. But I think I own my country. I own what we've done, and there's lots of time in Pakistan has taken steps that should not have been taken. I own it. But would you like to own Amir Khan? He was thinking to leave India because of what was happening in your government, the comments passed by politicians. What happened with recent Pakistani actors in India? And what do you think, as a good gesture, Pakistani cricket team went and played 3 matches. And as a good gesture, we were thinking now India will come and there's going to be cricket. There's something common. We'll see a new era of India-Pakistan relations, but nothing happens.
Not by cricket.
Why is it that we cannot have something like European Union so that there's no poverty in India and Pakistan? We can do something for education in both countries, because these are
I
problems.
understood your question. Let me answer it.
Thank you.
As far as European Union is, please tell your government that we unilaterally have given most favored nation status to Pakistan. But Pakistan, after having made a commitment, has not implemented it for the last 2.5 years and refusing to do now. Well, how can you have, when you are not ready even for a most favored nation status for India, you want a common market or a European Union with South Asia? That's absolutely impractical. The Malays lies in Pakistan, you have it cured. Tell the civilians to take control and end this all cross-border terrorist crossing. And tomorrow we'll start talking with each other, and we'll send not only the cricket team, but you can also have Amir Khan if you want.
The individual in the pink, right there.
It's a pleasure to see you in person, sir. I'm a big fan. My question actually is about the surgical strikes and as India's foreign policy as a whole. As someone who was in Bombay during the 2005 attacks and 2008 attacks, it kind of scares me when we go back to the same kind of military solutions, which only lead to violence. As you mentioned that Pakistan does not have a credible government that you can have So why doesn't India, when India is ready to condemn Pakistan in the General Assembly, when you're openly condemning them right now, their government, why aren't you chasing, and you're someone who studied economics, why aren't we going through a route of economic sanctions? That was very successful when America tried to do that with Iran. Why are we going through the same route that we've been doing for the past 70 years, which has only resulted in more civilian casualties? As someone who's lived through that, I fear that we're going in the same direction. So why aren't we doing something more from an economic sanctions perspective?
Well, as far as the last 10 years is concerned, we were living on hope that Pakistan will improve, but it hasn't. Now, we have started the process of not being the same as before. After Uri, we just didn't make speeches for calmness and peace and so on. We have taken a small step, but it is a very deadly step in the sense its consequences of being multiplied in a larger scale are tremendous, that we were able to do it with the intelligence information we had, and that even there was no forewarning for Pakistan at any stage. And therefore, we know that there are many other contingency plans which we will put into place if it becomes necessary. But we hope that Pakistan comes to become one of our partners, but they are not in any matter, they are not ready. You're talking about this, our artists, the Pakistani artists being blocked. See what they're doing to Indian films and so on in Pakistan. So, in effect, the persons who are in control, even at cultural matters, is Taliban and not the Prime Minister of Pakistan. So, we have to wait, and we can't take steps which go completely out of steps with the international environment. The international environment has come a pretty long way. This time, no government, including China, condemned our action on the surgical strike. And in Pakistan, in the United Nations, nobody supported Pakistan on the Kashmir issue. And generally speaking, in private, our conversations with world leaders show that they, on this issue of terrorism, they are willing to go with us for a long way. Now, as far as somebody saying that I'm admiring Israel and so on, well, we have very good relations with Israel. Israel has always helped us. We have very close relationship. And I know that many of the things that people are now putting in the media about Kashmir is what they put in Gaza and other places. So this kind of propaganda that is done, we can't act on that basis. We have our own sources giving us information. We have not one sources, but multiple sources. And we have come to the conclusion that Pakistan is, in fact, aiding and abetting the present agitation in Kashmir.
Over there in the dress, please.
Thank you. Sir, towards the end of your speech, you mentioned Naach Gana, and you referred to how the recent things about like sending Pakistani actors and artists back to their country and restricting the representation of Pakistani artists in Bollywood movies and things like that is a form of protection of something. But don't you think, like, all of us in this room can agree that we don't want a war between Pakistan and India, and we don't want a situation where either of the country wins, but rather something where they both, like, you know, find a solution collectively. Yeah. But it's ironic that something that, like, sending Pakistani artists and people like that back to their country doesn't really protect, but in fact increases conflict and makes it more likely that something will come up in order to need protection in the first place.
Yeah, that's one perspective, definitely. But I'll tell you my perspective. We think that Pakistan, presently constituted, cannot be relied on to come for peace. And the people who are actually managing it do want war. And we have reports now that after this Mosul attack by the American-supported forces of Iraq, many ISIS people are now thinking of moving to Pakistan as a sanctuary. Now, we have...
well, I'm sorry, sir. Wait. Sir.
Well...
Sorry, sir.
Well, I am here to speak. When your turn comes to speak from this side, you can say what you like. That is not the purpose. I am telling you what I know. And it is not that it has not appeared in the media.
Sir.
Well, I'm telling you that you have ISIS people in Pakistan. We have ISIS people in India. We have arrested several of them in Kerala recently. We have several of them in Tamil Nadu. And they all say that they have come through Pakistan. So it's not enough for you to say that you're innocent and we are guilty. The fact of the matter is we are the ones who are facing these attacks. And there's not a single terrorist, Indian terrorist, been arrested in any attack in Pakistan. There have been terrorist attacks in Pakistan. Of course, Pakistani civil society is suffering because of that. But not a single Indian so far has been arrested who's a terrorist. who's carried a gun from India with Indian markings and played havoc there. So we are not the ones who are encouraging any terrorist activity in Pakistan. It's Pakistan which is supporting it. They are all coming from Pakistan. Whoever we arrest, they say that we come from Pakistan. We give proofs. Kasab, who was caught, we even identified his village, and we produced a video of his parents saying, yes, he had gone to India for some training and didn't come back. Even after that, Pakistan said, we don't have adequate proof for 2008. Now, today we have a situation where we have to prepare the country's mind that it may be a possibility. I'm not saying it is even a possibility, but it may be a possibility in the future that we may have to go to war, because we have been to war with Pakistan 4 times already. It's not an unusual event. It would be a war. And therefore, to prepare the mind of the people, we can't allow these dilutions of cinema artists and cricket players coming to our country and playing. We cannot allow that. And this is our decision, and that's why we have made the decision. The day normalcy comes in Pakistan, we'll be the first ones to resume cricket and cinema.
Okay, I want to reiterate, please, this is not a shouting match. Your opinions are valid to be heard, but with the microphone, when we pick on you, please. Person in the back.
Sir, you repeatedly used the word force. I'm just curious, do you see any similarities between the rise of Nazi Germany and Hindu nationalism and growing Indian jingoism? Do you ever see India becoming a fascist country eventually? And lastly, what's your opinion on Hitler?
The last time, I think, you see, you haven't applied your mind to what I have said. I am an admirer of Israel, and I can't be at the same time an admirer of Hitler. There was one attempt at fascism in India, and that was in 1975 by Mrs. Gandhi declaring a state of emergency, where she suspended the constitution, put 140,000 people in jail without trial, and all the top leaders like Jayaprakash Nayak and Moraji Desai, everybody were put in solitary confinement. And within 2 years, she buckled and had to go back to declare an election. And of course, I was at that time fighting for democratic freedoms. And in fact, a good part of my those 2 years I spent in the United States mobilizing Indians and creating opinion, because there was so much censorship. It was easier for people to listen to Voice of America and BBC than read the Indian newspapers. So therefore, I think anybody in his right mind in India knows that the Indian people may tolerate many things, but they will not tolerate suspension of democracy and the imposition of fascism.
Right there in the middle. Right here, right here. Over the one right there.
This is in reference to an article you once wrote for the DNA, where you suggested that anyone who doesn't admit to having Hindu ancestry cannot have voting rights in the country. Doesn't that go completely against what you just said?
Voting rights under Indian law is not a fundamental right. It is subject to conditions.
I'm sorry,
Right.
can we?
And what I had said, you're misquoting, no problem, because many others, you must be listening to some of these rabid Islamic intellectuals who have misquoted my article completely. What I said exactly was this, that the attempt of the Islamic terrorists is to alienate the Muslims from the Hindus. And we have to therefore propagate and make the Muslim accept that he is also one of us, his DNA says he's one of us, and therefore his ancestors are Hindus. And therefore this country and the soil of this country belongs as much to him as me. Those who say that their ancestors are not Hindus, but in fact Gori and Ghazni, they are not fit to be in this country. They should have gone to Pakistan. In any case, they can stay here, but in my opinion, till they give up this kind of attitude, they should not be given voting rights. That's what I said.
Sorry, I have the mic here. Sir, firstly, thank you for taking on such challenging questions. I'm Daniel, I'm a Pakistani student in NYU, and I really admire you and respect you. But throughout this evening, we've heard how you said there's a one-way export of terrorism, and Umar Abdullah Saab first said the same thing, that Pakistan is exporting terrorism to India. But sir, what do you have to say about Kul Bhushnav Yadav, who's a raw agent, who's officially recognized by the government, and he went on record and said that he was he was given the task of destabilizing Balochistan, targeting minorities, carrying out bomb attacks on Hazara especially, and alienating such minorities. And when a common Indian man like that gentleman in the V-neck shirt asked you how India should play the role in Balochistan getting independent, what I'm getting from all this is that you expect India to be the judge on who should get independence from Pakistan, but at the same time, you don't want Pakistan interfering in Kashmir, and that's totally fine. I don't expect you to interfere in Balochistan.
Yeah, well, you put words in my mouth. If I may tell you what is in my mind, I will not rely on what you have assumed that this is what I have said. I didn't create Bangladesh. Indians did not create Bangladesh. Bangladesh was created by the severe butchery of the people by the Pakistan army, and they came, and their Mukti Bahini came to us for assistance. But we decided that we can't afford 20 million Bangladeshis or 10 million Bangladeshis as refugees in India, because our society would get destabilized. So when Pakistan bombed India in 6 cities on 3rd December 1971, we decided, well, you have declared war, we will take it to a logical extreme. But we did not do anything on the western part because Pakistan was totally devastated. 100,000 Pakistani soldiers surrendered, and they were brought to Delhi and kept in Tihar jail and looked after very well. In fact, their diet was much better than the average diet of the Indian. And after that, we had an agreement, and we released all the 100,000 Pakistani soldiers. Now, if Pakistan can't manage its affairs and everything starts falling apart, I don't think that we have to do anything at all. I am saying only that if somebody comes to my country and says, I am afraid to go back to Pakistan because I'm a Baluchi and therefore I'll be persecuted, we have to have a policy, and we have done for many. For instance, that Taslima from Bangladesh, we gave her asylum. Similarly, we have given to me as a Dalai Lama, even though at that time many people felt that it will alienate our relations with China, we gave asylum to Dalai Lama. So in the similar way, if some leader or a prominent person from Bangladesh, not only, I'll tell you, Balochistan, but from Pakhtunistan and Sindh, I think we were, and make out a case that his life is threatened. The United States also follows the same principle. We'll follow that principle, give them asylum. That doesn't make it us that we are dictating what Pakistan should do. Of course not, we are not dictating. But if the consequences fall on us, we will act according to our interests.
The individual in the suit.
Mr. Swamy, I have just a quick question and then a larger question. You know, on the most part, it seems like there's a fair and square blame on Pakistan and Islam with the situation in Kashmir. Is there anything India takes responsibility for in solving the problem and creating a more positive environment in South Asia? And my larger question is really, Indian Muslims have largely been very loyal to India, its constitution, and the nation, and there's very little or no documented participation in Al-Qaeda or Taliban or ISIS. But yet, there's a rise in Hindu fundamentalism, there's a rise in intolerance in India, not just against Muslims, but against Dalits, against Christians, against minorities and tribal people in the Northeast.
Yeah.
So you're so focused on Islamic terrorism in Islam. What's your perspective on Hindu fundamentalism, the rise of the RSS, the VHP, Bajrang Dal? So while you are so focused on Islamic terrorism, are you guys falling asleep on the rise of Hindu fundamentalism?
Listen, binary questions are not allowed. Huh? You ask me a question, but don't suggest the answer also to me. You see, these propagandistic remarks that the whole country is after all the Hindus, or at least the higher caste Hindus, I assume he meant, are after the Dalits. There is not a single documented evidence of IS in India or Al-Qaeda in India. I don't know, you must be living too long in United States. You come to India, and I will sit with you and show you documents after documents, which show that there has been an increase in recruitment of by ISIs of Indians, particularly in South India, Kerala, Karnataka, and Tamil Nadu. And we have arrested people also. So therefore, this to say, of course, it's not in a form that threatens us just now, but the recruitment has started. And whereas the question of Hindu fundamentalism, RSS, Vishnu Parishad, and so on, you may not like them, but there is no use calling them that, because there is fundamentalism means that you are saying this is the religion and no other interpretation is possible. That's impossible in Hinduism because we don't have a prophet. Fundamentalism is only possible if there's a prophet. If you have a large number of books which give different interpretations, you go to the Vedas, the 4 Vedas, you go to Upanishads, you go to Brahmanas, the Aranyakas, the Atharva Veda, all give variety of differences, the variety of interpretations. Our social code is subject to amendment. We have had Manu Shastra, then after that Yajnavalkya Shastra, after that Mitakshatra Shastra. Shastras are to be amended. So I can't understand how a religion which doesn't permit for a strict interpretation can ever breed fundamentalism. I think you have got the whole thing completely wrong.
Ready?
By the way, Hinduism also says that all religions lead to God, which no other religion says. Neither Islam nor Christianity.
Hi, sir. So I actually wanted to ask you, like, this whole debate has been taking a turn around from like Indo-Pakistan to Hinduism and Muslim. So first of all, people stay together out here, like Hindus and Muslim. I would like to tell you that thing, and even in India and maybe in Pakistan too. So it's not about the religion. The question I would actually target upon is like, we are the future of our country, okay? And you are the people who are leading our country. So if at all each of the person out here is actually saying that we take the actions for our country, but what would you actually suggest the best way to actually make sure that, to let our leaders know that this is the thing that they've done wrong? So I'm not talking on the perspective of India or Pakistan. I'm saying if India does something wrong, how would I as a person, as a person to the country, would suggest that, you have made this thing wrong. So this would solve a lot of problems.
Well, first of all, let me tell you, this Hindu-Muslim issue is not from India. It is from Pakistan. And we have Muslim generals, we have Muslim intelligence bureau officials, we have Muslims in almost, and in the political spectrum, we have a large number of Muslims. You saw Mr. Abdullah today. He's a Muslim. And what he said, we have differences, of course, on how to approach the problem. But that's political differences. But at the same time, first let me say, don't raise this issue as that I have made it as a Hindu versus Muslim. I never made it. It's Pakistan which has made it.
No, sir, I'm not saying. I'm saying
now,
that
second, as to one thing what are the things that we should have done? We should have never gone to the United Nations. Having gone to the United Nations after 10 years, we should have withdrawn it. Now we should withdraw it before our next elections come, that is 2019, and say to the UN that thank you very much, goodbye now, you haven't been able to do anything, we'll take care of the problem. To the Kashmiri people, the one mistake we have made is we have not made it clear that we'll pay any price, we'll go to any length to see that the whole of Jammu Kashmir remains with India as an integral and unalienated part. That confusion has helped the terrorists in Kashmir. And the day you are able to show that, because the Kashmiri people have voted during the voting time, during this time when the the surgical strike took place, there was complete peace in Kashmir. Not a single agency could take advantage of it. And therefore, I'm saying the one mistake we have made in Kashmir after you going to the United Nations was not to make it absolutely clear that no discussion will ever take place with Pakistan on the status of Kashmir. The only discussion that will take place is how to enter and end terrorism. That is the mistake that we made.
All right, thank you so much for your... I'm sorry. Thank you so much, Dr. Subramanian Swamy. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, before we close, there's just a few remarks that we wanted to say. You've seen views of different representation, whether it's left, whether it's right from both countries, and we just wanted to express them to you through this medium, through this conference, and for you to decide what our future holds. So thank you so much for coming out.